one thing that Gaulier would do is you'd walk on stage and he'd immediately send you off and be quite abusive about just how bad you were as a performer. And in front of your peers, in front of very famous actors who I was training with at the time. And he'd do the same to them. He wouldn't let them come on with their usual techniques, their usual shtick to get the audience's attention. He wanted to find something fresher, deeper, more engaging about them. So to be trained like that means that really
Today, I am thrilled to have an incredible guest on the show, Mark Bowden. Now, if you don't already know Mark, he's one of the world's top experts in body language and communication. He's coached everybody from Fortune 500 CEOs to prime ministers, helping them master the art of speaking with impact. Now, what's amazing about Mark is how he makes complex communication skills seem super accessible and entertaining. He's also the creator of Truth Plane, which is all about using our bodies to stand out and win trust. So whether you've seen him on his TEDx talk or you've caught him on TV as a body language expert, you know that this is going to be a fun and insightful conversation. Let's dive in. Mark, welcome. Really great to see you.
Good to see you, Spencer. Thanks for having me around.
Fantastic. So we are here to talk about the superpowers that public speaking give you. And I think one of the things I love starting with is taking you back in time and, talking about some of the early experiences of becoming a public speaker or, standing up in front of people. And, you're somebody when, they go and Google your name, they will see that you've done it all from theatre, national TV, huge stages, huge companies, and even featuring in a Nike streak ad, which I'm going to come back to. But I thought it would be interesting maybe to take you back to London in the early 90s, and you were doing French theatre, which I think could be an interesting segue. I'd love to know more about that if we could.
Yeah, so what that was really about was I was training with some of the masters in, let's kind of reframe it as European visual theatre. I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty of it, but essentially, if you look at the history of theatre, it comes from Greece and then it comes through Europe, travels through Europe, eventually in the Renaissance to the UK. You get Shakespeare and all of that, and most people know that onwards. But then if you go back to the history of theatre, you really are going back through Europe, France, Italy, back to Greece. And if you want to really understand why theatre's about and how theatrical performance actually works at its real essence, you go back to those places. And there are some people who can trace their techniques and their history, right back into pre-documented history, the passing on of the skills verbally to each other rather than it being written in documents. So I studied with some of the people who were from those families in the real essence of how you get on stage in front of an audience and have an impact.
And what was that like when you first started doing that? Because I don't know if that was some of your early experiences of being on a stage in front of other people, but what was Mark going through at that time when you were doing that?
Oh, well, I mean, let's just call it this. It was all pretty brutal because it's quite regimented. It's quite, in some cases, quite precious, quite regimented. And we're really trying to work there at the top end of performance. How do you keep an audience really engaged with you with nothing, with no material? So what is it about you and the nature of being live, elevated in front of an audience? You've gone, okay, so I'm here on stage and you're there in the audience. So I'm here to deliver to you. What is it about you with no writer's material, with nobody else in many cases, that's going to keep that audience entertained.
It's almost the one of the hardest but the most powerful things to do when you can only use your physicality on a stage
Mm.
to actually hold somebody's attention. So I think it's definitely an interesting skill to have learned out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, as a kind of a clearer example, for example, I was working with a guy called Philippe Gaulier, who most people, the best way for people to understand who he is he trained Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
So if you think about what Sacha does and those grotesque characters and how really those grotesques are at the essence of Baron Cohen, they're him, but at an extreme. One thing that Gaulier would do is you'd walk on stage and he'd immediately send you off and be quite abusive about just how bad you were as a performer and in front of your peers, in front of very famous actors who I was training with at the time. And he'd do the same to them. He wouldn't let them come on with their usual techniques, their usual shtick to get the audience's attention. He wanted to find something fresher, deeper, more engaging about them. So to be trained like that means that really you can walk on in front of an audience and just go, nothing will be as bad as what I've experienced. Like there's nothing you could all walk out and that would be a blessing as to what I've experienced. So now I'm not saying I don't walk on and I'm like, I'm anxious or nervous or all the things that others who are new to this will experience, because that for me is like, obviously you're going to feel that because it's important. 3,000 people have in some cases paid for you to deliver them something, and there's a responsibility around that. So I really feel the responsibility, and I feel the danger of it, but because I've decided to go into the danger. There's come a point where I've gone, well, look, you signed up for this. So, and sometimes I'm going to go, well, I'm just going to increase the danger of this, because why not? Because what could possibly happen around this? Which means that the audience, when I increase the danger, can experience something that they haven't experienced from another speaker, which is the risk has gone up when I come onto the stage, which means they're getting a moment between me and them where everybody's feeling alive at that moment, because they're getting that feeling of Mark hasn't done this before. This is new. This is really happening between Mark and us right now. So really that was the training that I went through. I think if I think about the essence of the training that I went through, it's how can you produce something on stage in that moment that's truly real between them and you, and it's never going to happen again. If they show up the next day, and if I was doing the speech, 2 days in a row, if they showed up the next day, they'd go, "No, you didn't do that yesterday."
Yeah.
And some of it I didn't do yesterday, and some of it I did, but it feels so real and immediate that they forget that I did it yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, and I draw real parallels to the world of improv. I've been studying improv the last couple of years, and that's very similar, that it's different every time and you are forced to fail because half the time the failure is funny. And it definitely helps you build confidence in a way that is different from when you're standing up in a meeting or something like that. But
yeah. So there's some elements of impro in that. Look, I mean, my issue with impro is that as a form, like most of it's, for me, is just pretty boring. It totally relies on the audience knowing that the people are improvising and knowing that they're having to make it up on the spot, and therefore seeing the failure or the success within that context and going, "Oh, isn't that brilliant? Like they were at such a risk," whereas they shouldn't feel like I'm making it up, but they should feel like it's totally new.
yeah.
And that would be the difference. Like, they shouldn't be concerned for my failure. They shouldn't have been be going, on the edge of their seats going, I wonder if Mark will mess this up. Oh, he did. How funny. How funny, or I wonder what Mark will say next. Oh, I didn't expect that. Oh, how funny. If you took most impro, if not all of it, and wrote down what they say and then got other performers to perform it, it would be deadly boring script. It's totally reliant on that, on the performers having put themselves in a position of risk that the audience know about, which actually is not the keynote speaker or the public speaker or the business presenter.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So the theatre gave you like a solid grounding, and where did Mark go from there? Now, I know you did this Nike commercial in 2003. Was there anything in between that? How do those worlds collide?
Yeah, well, I mean, during all of that period, I was traveling all over the world as a performer, directing, choreography, movement direction, training actors all over the world, performing as a performer all over the world. So I was really immersed in that area in many different ways. And at the same time, I'd been asked by people in PR, let's call it, in those days, to work with politicians and people in business in order to help them better manage the risks that they were going into in talking in front of groups, whether it was trying to win in an election or whether it was trying to get their, communicate their value, their share price under extreme risks. How do they manage that risk? And most specifically, what do they do with their nonverbal communication to manage the risk that the audience perceive and manage the risk that they were perceiving? So what I would call like an embodied cognition approach to managing the not knowing of the situation that they were going into, because obviously the body under extreme risk and not knowing starts to do fight and flight.
Yeah.
And you need countermeasures to that. You can't stop it. That takes a knife or drugs, both of which will either subdue you in such a way or will kill you. So you can't stop it. You can't psychologically talk yourself out of it because it will increase the chemicals that it's putting around your body by the endocrine system. So you have to countermeasure that electrochemical response. And so that's what I was doing at the same time.
Yeah. And what were kind of where did that lead you to? Because that obviously was, now you're going all around the world, you're helping many different people in different places. What was that journey like to kind of more close to what you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's the same, but with none of the entertainment anymore. Really, though I'm showing up on cameras all the time, I understand very well how to work cameras, how to work what we might call, back in the day, TV or film, which is now really, this is like the pop of now. Who doesn't have a TEDx talk? Who doesn't have a really successful, it's like, who doesn't have a single, who hasn't written a song and it's been relatively successful. And you should be able to, just like pop back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like, yeah, you should be able to write that stuff and you should be able to get a hit with it, just like you should be able to show up in front of an audience or on a camera and get a hit. Maybe just one. You might not get, a succession. You might not be a star forever, but this is the pop of now. So yeah, I mean, the entertainment, the kind of entertainment of theatre, film, and TV, and working with those performers and in those platforms, fell to the side somewhat, and I just started working more with business and politics all over the world, simply because it was new, more interesting. Nobody was approaching that from the way that I was specifically approaching it. I mean, that's not to say there weren't a whole bunch of communication consultants that were from performance background And they'd go, I've studied as they'll say, I've studied as an actor and I've done this and I've done that. But in my case, I trained those people. I was specific about nonverbal communication, specific about the history and the techniques of getting on a stage, and exactly why human beings do it. And so therefore, Spencer, why, when you get on a stage in front of an audience, you might be elated to such a degree that they think you are more credible, more competent, more charismatic than the person who doesn't get on the stage, who is way better educated, has way better form than you, has way more success. Yeah. And they'll pick you over that one over there, when in fact they shouldn't. Like, why? What is the history of performance that says they pick you over that person there who they really should be? Because you will mess it up. I mean, if you get the job against them, they are going to perform better at the job, but they'll give the job to you. They'll give the contract to you because you stood up in front of an audience and you spoke. You put yourself in that risk situation. To understand exactly what it is about human beings and our history that makes that true and what you have to do, that was a real advantage that others just didn't had. They hadn't thought about that. They hadn't been trained in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I always say to people that, yeah, learning the skill of speaking and presenting can lift you up a few levels in terms of how people see you. And the opposite is true. It can take you down a few levels if you're not good at it. So I
Right.
think like it's definitely, and that is a bit of a segue into, what are the benefits, when you look back at your career and connect the dots of all the things that you've done, you know, are there any, there's probably some very obvious benefits, but are there any unexpected benefits? You spoke already about the fact that, yeah, it can make you more charismatic, more confident, more persuasive when you're on a stage and you're handing that message. But have there been any other things that when you look back, you think without me learning that skill, that never would have happened?
Yeah. So I think there's many, but let me pick on one, which is connections. It is astonishing who watches media, who watches, you know, media put on all of these platforms. It was astonishing back in the day when actually maybe YouTube wasn't as prevalent, and I was starting to be seen on media way more, talking about communication. And I'd go on a lunchtime chat show and I'd get a call from a CEO of a multinational. Just literally going, "What were you doing? Why are you watching that show?
Yeah.
Like, why?" Oh, and they'd have some story as to why they caught you on that show. But it's just what's the chances of that? Or why would I ever think CEO of multinational corporation watches that lunchtime chat show? Because they do. It's like weird. That's odd.
Yeah.
So you'd get, things would happen which you just wouldn't expect to happen. Above and beyond, they think you can do it because they think that. Look, it's that thing of, well, he wouldn't say that in front of so many people, in such a risky situation, if it wasn't true, or he didn't believe it, or he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, I might. You're just predicting that I wouldn't. You're just predicting that I can do it. Now, luckily enough, I can do it, but that's lucky for you because ultimately you've gone based on, I think he must be competent because he wouldn't put himself in this risky situation if he wasn't. And that's not true. And you're just lucky that it turns out I can more than do it. I will delight you. Like I will be able to achieve this on a level that you couldn't even imagine based on the prediction you'd made on seeing me on TV or just watching me, or just I walked on in front of 3,000 people and you were sat there and went, that's pretty confident. It's like, yeah, of course it is. Like, because I'm using techniques to cause you to be confident in me, to trust me. It's all technique, and you can learn it. Now, if you can't back it up in the end, people will be really disappointed in you. So I don't suggest you don't have the backup for it, but somebody else will do it. Somebody else will learn the technique and not have the backup. They
Yeah,
won't have, the minerals to back that up at
yeah,
all. So you
yeah.
better.
So I'm thinking about somebody listening to this who wants to start. That they're like, okay, I want to get better at speaking, communication, standing up in front of people. What would you advise them? Where should they start?
Yeah. Here's where I'd start. Find somebody who you think is really good at this, and you really like. Not that they're really good, like, but I don't really do anything like them. Like, find somebody to be your hero. Yeah. Find
Yeah,
somebody to go, I love what they're saying. I like what they're doing. Yeah. And start to emulate them in as many ways as you can. Now, often people will go, but you're just copying them. You cannot copy anything that you're not already. Yeah, the reason you you worship them, you hero worship them, is there's some of that inside you already. It's just not as big as their version. Yeah, so it's in you, and by emulating them, it's going to amplify what you've already got in inside there, and it'll amplify and it'll evolve at such a level that it won't be them anymore. It will be you with that spirit, that essence, that theme coming out more in you. So I don't know what it is for you, but I can think back to all the people that I in my life I'd gone, that I love that, I love that. And so when I'd be performing or speaking, I'd be going, how can I do more of that? Never worried about, well, people will go, well, you're just copying X, because I knew I wasn't. I'm trying to use that image, image from Imago, perfect, a perfect thought. Yeah. I'm trying to use that Imago to elicit more of that principle out of myself.
yeah.
So find somebody as a hero and start doing more of that.
Yeah, it's some great advice, because you can see very easily how that leads you to find your own voice. And it's definitely, I think back to the early days, and I even do it now. I watch a ridiculous amount of speakers on various different stages and
Yeah.
platforms, and yeah, when something grabs me, like if I'm like, oh, I'll just watch this for a few minutes, and then suddenly 40 minutes later I'm still watching it, I'm like, okay, I need to reverse engineer. What just happened?
Yeah.
Why was that so good? What made me lock onto it in such a way? And I think, yeah, it's such a great way to figure out, okay, what do I like? And do I want to do that? And how do I do it? And like you say, you just have to add your own personal flair to it.
Yeah. I mean, look, Spencer, I would say that's going to happen anyway, because you're not them. I mean, just genetically, just the reality is you are not them. So you can never be them. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you put your finger on it there. What is it about them that has really attracted me? Not what is it about them that attracts other people? Yeah, there's some great people. There's some people out there who people think are great speakers, have great content, and I couldn't be more indifferent to them. I couldn't, like, with the best will in the world, I'm like, I can't sit through this. There's nothing about the person. There's nothing about the. I've heard this all before. It's like, and they're fanatics about them, and I couldn't be more indifferent to them. But I couldn't be more indifferent to them. Other people love them. So it's not about the other people, it's about you. So just think about, what is it that I really love about watching them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it's in anything, you always know that you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
so you have to focus on what makes you the most excited and happy to stand up and say your piece. Because I
Yeah.
think, like, for me, there's that kind of like huge difference between internalizing and externalizing before you stand up and do something. And I think that for me, one of the things I always focus on is like, okay, why am I excited about this? How am I helping somebody do something different next week? So I think it's it's an important part. And is that, it kind of leads me to a question about, or I'm
Mm.
curious about, you know what's your process before you go on TV, go on a big stage, go to an important meeting? Do you have, what's that lead up like for you?
Well, let's talk about that process, because in your last sentence, you hit upon what is most important for me. It may be most important for you. It may be what should be most important to all speakers, or maybe it's just us. Okay? I don't know. But you said what, something like, what am I going to do to help those
Yeah,
people do something, and then you extended, do something different next week, yeah, or whatever. Yeah, that's all I'm thinking of, is like, how can I help? Yeah. Now, all my brain will go off in all kinds of different areas and down all kinds of dark alleys of you should say this because that's really smart, or you think that's really smart, and you should do this because that'd be really exciting. And after it's kind of talked all that nonsense, I eventually get round to, Mark, just go and help them. Just
yeah,
go and get on there and help. Do whatever you need to do to be most helpful for them right now. Right now.
yeah,
Yeah. And I find if I do that, well, here's what happens if I do that. I don't know whether it turns out to be helpful. Okay. I just don't know. Yeah. I mean, I do get great emails from people, and people afterwards going, "Oh, wow, that was really helpful." Or I do get that. But I just don't know. But if somebody comes to me afterwards and goes, "Mark, what were you talking about? Like, what were you doing?" All I do is go, "I'm just trying to be helpful." I can walk away, I can get on that plane and go, I thought I was being the most helpful I could be for them right now. And so if you want your money back, or you or you want to criticize me, or if you want to come up and go, "Oh, Mark, here's what you should have done," like, I'm not open to that,
yeah,
because I was being the most helpful I could in that moment. And if you think something should have been different, you want to get on there next time and do what you do. And I'll be totally happy for you to do that. Yeah. So
yeah,
it helps me, I think, produce the best performance, and it helps me live with myself afterwards, and it helps me deal with all the people who are congratulatory and critical, because I've got as many people, hopefully more, who are coming up going, "That was great." And I could easily think that it's me being great rather than the help being really helpful. And they're responding to that in a way that can make me feel very important and very successful and really good at what I do. Which,
oh, it's such a good point. Like, I've never thought about that before, but like, and it's important because you want both. You
yeah,
want people to have connected to you because of the skill, but you also want, hang on, my objective is I'm trying to help somebody do something, or I'm trying to get somebody to change something. Like, so, but actually, it's like, how do you balance those two things? Because you're right. Like, there is definitely something that people respond to you because A, you're up on the stage, B, you're, doing something in a way that's kind of like persuasive and confident. But actually, you have a mission, like you are trying to help them do something better. So yeah, I have not thought about that before, but
yeah.
and I don't even know if there is a way that you could balance the two things.
Well, I mean, look, that's part of your job. In my view, that's part of your job, is to
Yeah,
balance the two things. Because if we go back to what I was saying before about why is it that when a human being gets on a stage, that the audience, or into a space which has been designated as, that's the space for you, the audience, and that is the space for you, the principal, the performer. We're all focused on you right now. It doesn't have to be raised. Back in the Greek days, the audience were raised up, and the performer was on the floor. But here's the difference. When that started, and right back to when we started helping people by telling these stories and performing, It's a world of shadows and it's a world of the gods. And that's what we have to understand as performers, is we still have this innate feeling that when that person walks onto stage, they're starting to become not a human being, but they're embodying a higher or lower principle. They can become a god or a demon.
Yeah.
And so once you understand that and you start playing into the very essence of what's happening, then you can get to a point where they worship you. Yeah, where they go, this is something more. This is an essence. This is a life force on there. That's when they can have a spectacular time. But then if you're performing at that level, you're going to make sure that when you're not on that stage, that you've realized you're not that anymore. And that was just a vessel to help them. And so when they come up to you afterwards, it's like, yeah, I'm not a god anymore. I'm not that demon anymore.
Yeah.
But what remains is the help. Look, I'll get forgotten. Okay, I will get forgotten. I understand this. I'm not going to live forever, and I will get forgotten. But the help that I gave, like that could go on. Like somebody could a mother could pass that on to her son, who could pass that on to his daughter.
Yeah.
You know, that the help can live forever.
Yeah.
So that's what I've got to kind of remember. It sounds very extreme, but I mean, you know, why would I do it? Why would?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think for me, it was a way to handle nerves and fear in the beginning. Like I remember like when I first joined Prezi and I climbed up on a stage for the first time to talk in front of 200 people. And I'm like, so hang on a minute, I work for a presentation company and I'm here to do a presentation about giving presentations. And like, so that the amount of pressure I put on myself was just insane.
Right.
And I can remember like 10 minutes before, like almost wanting to, and I was hiding behind the stage, and I was like, and that's what pulled me out of it, was this idea that like, Spencer, the stuff that you have is going to really help people. Just focus on that and forget everything else. And like, and so in the beginning for me, the idea of like, this stuff is important and it can really help you in your life and your career. That's what got me on the stage and got me past that fear in the beginning. So I think it's something
Well, look,
that helps both.
What that does is you become more conscious of the people out there and the help. Okay, people out there and what they need, which is more socially conscious, and you become less conscious of yourself in that situation. So you become less self-conscious. Because when you become self-conscious, it's like you start monitoring every little thing that you're doing and every little thought. You know, why did I have that thought? Why, like, and the more you can get away from being self-conscious and socially conscious, like who's that out there? What help do they need? Yeah, and how can I give them help? So the I comes into it, but the less you can move, the more you can move away from that I, the more you disappear. And so afterwards, it's like, it's not like you weren't there, but the self-conscious version of you was there less.
Yeah.
You know, which makes it feel a lot less anxious.
Yeah, that's a very elegant way to say it. I love it. Like focus on the audience, not on you, but what it does is, really remove that feeling of being self-conscious.
Yeah. I mean, going back to me training with those French masters, you know, what would be shouted at me again and again and again is, it's not about you, it's about the audience. It's not about you. Nobody cares that your grandmother is dead, as one would shout in French. No, nobody cares that your grandmother is dead. They're not interested in your feelings. They're not interested in your life. They're interested in their feelings, their life. That's what you're there to deal with. And the less you bring in your life, the more they see theirs. the more they can get a feeling for their own life. And the more you project your feelings and your life on them, the more they go, well, that's not me. Oh, the less connection
Yeah.
there is. And it's counterintuitive because so many people have been told, go on and tell your story. It's like the audience couldn't be less interested in your story. Yeah. They are interested in things that you are saying if it's about them. And it may well be that your story can be a thing that you say which they connect with, but it's nothing to do with you. And the less it has to do with you, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The audience needs to put themselves into the story. That's always
Right. They
the way of thinking.
should be they should be the story. It is them. And the bigger the story, the bigger the drama, and the more it attaches to those central stories that we've all lived in our lives, which is, for example, Spencer, have you ever broken something and it couldn't be put back together again? I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
because we all have.
Yeah.
And we've done it with objects and relationships and ideas and years and
Yeah.
days that we've had. It's like, it's so broken, it cannot be put back together. There's nothing will fix that. Okay. And so when I say to you that story, when I say, have you ever broken something and it couldn't be put back together again? Your brain goes, damn, that's, yeah, yeah. So there's these central stories. It's not the hero's journey at all.
Yeah.
It's these moments that we've all experienced. Just like, Spencer, have you ever got so engaged in something that you could not be stopped?
Of
Like, you
course.
were relentless. Okay. So there's this story that we have called Relentless.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the unstoppable us. And we've all experienced that unstoppable. Yeah. And we've all experienced the thing that is broken and cannot be put together again. And we've all experienced, have you done something, Spencer, and you thought it was beautiful and really good and it just wasn't recognized by other people? They didn't see it. Yeah, we've all experienced that.
Yeah.
So notice when I tell you these archetypal stories, which are not the hero's journey, this whole idea of like, you got to have, a 3-act. It's like, no, certainly not in a business presentation, but in a business presentation, unstoppable. Right? That's a story. Relentless is a story, the thing that's broken and cannot be put back together again. So what are you going to do? That's a story that everybody's experienced.
Yeah. Shared human experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that the audience are looking for in your story. And if you don't explore where your story has those things, because it's that the audience is attaching to. Yeah, it's just your story has that in, and if you don't recognize that, you can't pull out the real drama of the story, the real human beauty and tragedy of that story.
Yeah. Great. So I'm thinking you and I both know the amazing power of being a speaker and a presenter and a communicator, but I'm trying to imagine somebody who is in a job in a company and doesn't really yet maybe have a desire to go onto a big stage, but has been told you need to get better at presenting or you need to get better at communication in their one-to-one. Like, why should they care about developing this skill? Because for most people, it's scary and hard and tough.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What would you say?
Well, I'd say, is there a way that you don't have to do this because it's scary and hard and tough? Like, can you get away with not doing it? The first thing I do with any of my clients is like, could we get somebody else to do the speech because it'll be cheaper for you, it'll be less involvement for me. Yeah, maybe there's somebody really good out there who can do this. Oh, by the way, they'll be seen as the leader. I mean, so like they'll be, that's. But we could be, and we might be okay with that. We can pull the strings in the background. We can still be in charge It's just they'll be seen as the leader. Yeah, and there may be some benefit to that. So the first thing to explore is do you have to do this work? Because if you can get away without doing the work, it'll be a lot easier for you. Okay, and you still may have the same level of power. Now, you may not have the prestige, you may not be seen as the charismatic, and you may lose the power. Somebody else, a competitor to you, may well get that power. That competitor maybe has terrible ideas, bad product, bad service. They're going to win in the market because they communicate better. That's the conversation you got to have with yourself: is do I really need this, and do I really want it? Because it's not free. I mean, it's less arduous than you think, because you can get help. Like, there's a whole bunch of us, Spencer included, including you. There's a whole bunch of us out there who've gone, look, how could we make this easier? How can we systematize it? Like, I went, look, this is learnable. Everything's learnable. I went from the standpoint of everything is learnable, because I believe that to be true. And so far, I've not been proved wrong on that. You can have some genetic capacity for greater results, but the techniques are totally learnable.
Yeah.
And there's no genetic capacity in being a communicator. There just isn't. I mean, sure, basketball player, yes. Sprinter, yes. You can still learn the techniques of sprint. It's just you're not going to win against somebody with the genetic capacity.
Yeah.
It's just you're going to get outranked on the Olympic stage every time by somebody with the genetic capacity. But you can put in the time, and you can put in the time on the technique.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I agree.
I'd say, think about, do you want it, and then go and find some help on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like to your point, everything's learnable. And I think what I found, which I didn't understand in the early days, but now I've kind of self-taught myself a bit about biology and neuroscience, is that, like, we are really good at making things seem more scary than what they actually are.
Yeah.
And there is a huge gap between when you sit there thinking like, oh, God, I've got to go and do that. And then when you do it and it's like, okay, it wasn't so bad. Actually, that was pretty okay. And I think like that, and that's biology, it's emotions, but but yeah, so I think it's great advice to
Yeah.
push somebody to give it a go at the very least.
Yeah. And look, here's what I often say, Spencer, is if you think you have something important for people, good, a message, product, service, it's like, and you think it's going to do good, or stop bad. It'd be better if you thought it was going to do good than stop bad. It'd be better if it was a positive rather than a counter negative. But fine, go with that. Then I would say it's your duty to communicate that. Yeah, because otherwise nothing will change. They're going to keep on doing what they've always done. They'll keep on buying what they've always bought. They'll keep on believing what they've always believed. Like, nothing will change. It's your duty to go and do this. So decide whether you have that duty or not. And any duty, like, is expensive. But as you were saying, Spencer, it's possibly not as expensive as you thought.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, because for thousands of years, people have understood the techniques of communication.
Yeah. It all goes back to Aristotle.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Conscious of time, and I want to give you a chance in a moment to talk a bit about your stuff and where people can find out more. But is there any last thoughts or anything that we haven't spoken about that you think is important for people to know or to hear or to feel?
No, I don't think so. I think we've got through for me, the most important elements of why you should speak. And let me just reiterate that, because if you don't, somebody else will win. And so that's it. Now, if you're okay with them winning, or you think they have a really good idea, step back. Take, it's going to be an easy life. Things are going to work out well. If you think it's going to go wrong, because they win. It's your duty to do something about it, and to get to stand out, to win trust, to gain credibility. There are techniques to doing that, and you can learn them, and they can be learned fast. They can work immediately. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
feel better and be less self-conscious immediately. So, do something about it.
yeah, yeah. I love the idea of, yeah. Do you have a vision for your life and where it's going? Whether that's just your work and your career, or whether it's in your personal life. But yeah, the very first stepping stone is saying yes to something, even if you're not prepared, and then prepare like a badass and learn what you need to
Yeah.
learn. Yeah. Cool. So where can people find out more about you, see more of your things, and obviously any links that you say or want me to, I'll put in the links below for people.
Yeah, so my name's Mark Bowden, and if you Google that, you will find me. And if you look at the word truth plane, TRUTHPLANE, you will find me. So if you like what you're hearing from myself and Spencer, and you want to understand more about me, get more in depth, Mark Bowden, truth plane, you'll find me.
Fantastic. So all that remains is to say a huge thank you for your time and sharing your experience. There's definitely a lot of value for people to unpack and to go find out more about you, because you have such a rich depth and breadth of help and information. So I definitely say to people, go search Mark up.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Spencer.
Cool.